Commander Sarah Chen sat in the cold metal chair, staring at the screen in front of her. The blue light made her tired eyes hurt, but she could not look away. What she was reading made her stomach feel sick. The message was in the Zephyrian language, but Sarah had learned to read it during her 10 years serving the Empire. She was not supposed to see this message. It was meant only for high-ranking Zephyrian officers, but a mistake in the computer system had sent it to her terminal instead. Sarah read the words again, hoping she had made an error. She had not. Operation Sandstorm will begin in 3 days, the message said. Human battalions 7, 12, and 15 will attack the main hegemony base. This attack is expected to fail. The humans will die, but they will keep the enemy busy. While the humans fight and die, our real forces will attack the hegemony supply depot from behind. We will win great victory and much treasure. Sarah's hands started to shake. Battalion 15 was her brother Marcus's unit. 15,000 human soldiers were going to die, and the Zephyrians knew it. They were sending humans to die on purpose. She had always known that humans were treated badly in the Empire. The aliens called them barbarians. They said humans were too stupid for real technology, too wild for important jobs. But humans were good fighters, so the Empire used them as soldiers. Sarah had believed this was fair. She thought humans were lucky to serve such an advanced civilization. Now she knew the truth. Humans were not partners. They were tools that could be thrown away. Sarah stood up and walked to the small window in her quarters. Outside, she could see the planet below. Somewhere down there, her brother was getting ready for what he thought was an important mission. He believed he was fighting for honor and glory. He did not know he was going to be sacrificed like an animal. Sarah had grown up with Marcus on Earth Colony 7. Their parents had died when they were young, so they had taken care of each other. Marcus was 3 years younger, but he had always been the brave one. When the Zephyrians came to recruit soldiers, Marcus had signed up first. Sarah had joined later to watch over him. For 10 years, she had watched humans fight and die for the Empire. She had seen good people killed in battles that seemed pointless, but she had always believed there was a reason. She had thought the Zephyrians were wise and knew things she did not understand. The message on her screen proved she was wrong. Sarah sat back down and read more messages in the computer files. Each one made her feel worse. The Zephyrians had done this before, many times. They would send human forces into battles they could not win. The humans would fight hard and die bravely. The enemy would use all their weapons and energy fighting the humans. Then the real Zephyrian forces would attack the tired enemy and win easy victories. One message talked about the barbarian disposal rate. It said that humans fought so well that they were expensive to maintain. It was better to let them die in battle and recruit new ones from the colonies. Sarah found records of battles she remembered. Good friends had died in those battles. She had cried for them and honored their memory. Now she learned they had died for nothing. The Zephyrians had sent them to die on purpose. Her hands made fists. She wanted to break something. She wanted to scream. But she forced herself to stay quiet and think. If she told anyone about this, they would kill her. The Zephyrians did not allow humans to see secret messages. They would say she was a spy or a traitor. Even if some humans believed her, what could they do? Humans had no ships of their own, no weapons except what the Zephyrians gave them. They were scattered across many worlds, with no way to talk to each other except through Zephyrian communication systems. But she could not let her brother die. She could not let 15,000 humans die for nothing. Sarah looked at the star charts on her wall. She had studied every battle the humans had fought. She knew how the Zephyrians thought and how they planned their attacks. She understood their technology better than most humans because she had worked hard to learn it. Maybe the Zephyrians had made a mistake when they called humans barbarians. Maybe they thought barbarians could not be smart or tricky. Maybe they had forgotten that humans had fought wars on Earth for thousands of years before the aliens ever found them. Sarah opened a new file on her computer and started to write. She would send a message to Marcus, but she had to be very careful. The message had to look normal to any Zephyrian who might read it. But Marcus had to understand the real meaning. She remembered when they were children. Their father had been a geologist who studied rocks and minerals. He had taught them the names of different stones and metals. When they wanted to send secret messages to each other, they would write letters about rocks that meant different things. Red stones meant danger. Iron meant weapons. Gold meant something valuable. Sarah started typing. Dear Marcus, I have been studying the mineral reports from your area. The readings show high levels of red iron oxide in sectors 7, 12, and 15. This suggests dangerous ground conditions. The Geological Survey recommends avoiding deep excavation in these areas for the next 3 days. Instead, focus your mining operations on the supply depot in Sector 23. The mineral density there is much better. She read the message again. To a Zephyrian, it would look like boring scientific talk. But Marcus would understand. Red iron meant danger. Sectors 7, 12, and 15 were the battalion numbers. Deep excavation meant heavy fighting. The supply depot was the real target the Zephyrians planned to hit. Sarah sent the message through the regular communication system. Then she deleted it from her computer and cleared all records that she had sent it. But sending a warning to Marcus was not enough. Even if he understood and tried to save his men, 3 battalions could not fight the whole hegemony army and win. They needed help. Sarah stood up and walked around her small room. The metal walls seemed to close in on her as she thought. The Zephyrians were too strong to fight directly. They had better weapons, better ships, and more soldiers. But they also had a weakness. They thought humans were stupid. For 10 years, Sarah had watched Zephyrian officers ignore human opinions and human ideas. They never asked humans for advice about battles, even though humans did most of the fighting. They never worried that humans might be listening to their private conversations. They treated humans like smart animals, useful, but not dangerous. Sarah smiled for the first time since reading the terrible message. The Zephyrians had taught her their language, their technology, and their military tactics. They had put humans in important positions throughout their fleet because they needed human skills, but did not fear human intelligence. What if they were wrong? What if the barbarians were smarter than their masters thought? Sarah sat down and started to plan. Sarah spent the next 2 days thinking and planning. She could not save her brother and the other humans by fighting the Zephyrians directly. But maybe she did not need to fight them. Maybe she could trick them instead. The idea that came to her was dangerous and complicated. If it failed, many people would die, including her. But if she did nothing, the humans would die anyway. Sarah started by making a list of every human. She knew who worked on the Zephyrian ships. There were more than she had expected. Humans worked in the engine rooms because they were good with machines. They worked in communications because they could learn languages quickly. They worked in supply and medical departments because they were careful and hardworking. The Zephyrians thought these humans were just doing simple jobs. They did not realize that humans in these positions could see and hear almost everything that happened on the ships. Sarah began sending messages to humans she trusted. But she had to be very careful. The messages had to look normal, like regular work communications. She could not write anything that would make the Zephyrians suspicious. To engineer Tom Rodriguez on the ship Stellar Wind, she wrote, Tom, please, check the power flow patterns in sections C7 through C15. I am seeing some unusual readings that might indicate system stress. We should be extra careful during the upcoming operation. To Communications Officer Lisa Park on the ship Night Hunter, she wrote, Lisa, I need you to run diagnostic tests on all communication arrays. Make sure to pay special attention to emergency, backup frequencies. We might need them soon. To Supply Sergeant Mike Chen, no relation to Sarah despite the same last name, on the ship Iron Fist, she wrote, Mike, please verify that all ammunition and fuel supplies are properly secured. I have heard that the upcoming mission might involve some rough maneuvering. Each message seemed normal and boring, but Sarah hoped the humans who received them would understand that something important was happening. These people had worked with her for years. They knew she did not usually worry about small technical problems unless there was a good reason. Over the next day, Sarah received replies to her messages. Each reply seemed like normal work talk, but she could read the real. Meaning Tom wrote back, Sarah, I found the power flow problems you mentioned. The patterns are definitely unusual. I will keep monitoring the situation and let you know if things get worse. Lisa replied. The communication arrays are working normally, but I did find some interesting background noise on the backup frequencies. It almost sounds like old mining communication codes. Should I investigate further? Mike's answer said, all supplies are secure, but I noticed that some ammunition types are running low. I have taken the liberty of relocating some reserves to more convenient locations for quick access. Sarah smiled when she read these messages. Her friends understood. They were ready to help, even though they did not know exactly what she was planning. The most important message came from David Kim, who worked in the central computer system on the command ship. His message was longer and more technical than the others. Sarah, I ran the system checks you requested. Everything appears normal on the surface, but I found some irregularities in the data flow patterns. It looks like information is being routed through some unusual pathways. I also discovered that the backup communication protocols have been activated without proper authorization. Should I report this to the Zephyrian officers, or would you like me to investigate quietly first? Sarah felt her heart beat faster when she read David's message. He had found something important, something that could help her plan work. She wrote back to David, please investigate quietly first. Do not report anything to the Zephyrians until we understand what is happening. Can you access historical communication patterns from previous operations? David's reply came quickly. Yes, I can access historical data. I have been looking at communication patterns from operations over the past 2 years. The irregularities I found seem to happen before every major human combat mission. It is as if someone is deliberately creating communication problems during these operations. Sarah stared at David's message for a long time. The Zephyrians had been sabotaging human communications during battles. They wanted to make sure humans could not coordinate with each other or call for help when the battles went bad. Now Sarah had a new idea. If the Zephyrians were going to sabotage human communications, maybe she could sabotage Zephyrian communications instead. She wrote a new message to David. Can you create similar communication problems for the Zephyrian systems during the upcoming operation? Make it look like a natural system failure, not sabotage. David replied, that would be technically challenging but possible. I would need help from other systems specialists. Also, the timing would have to be perfect. Sarah started writing messages to more humans. She reached out to people on 12 different ships in the fleet. Each message was carefully written to look like routine work communication. To electronics technician Amy Foster. Amy, please review the sensor calibration procedures for the upcoming operation. Pay special attention to targeting systems and navigation sensors. To Maintenance Chief Carlos Vega. Carlos, I want you to schedule routine maintenance on all critical systems for exactly 48 hours from now. Focus on anything that might fail under stress. To Medical Officer Dr. Jennifer Walsh. Jen, please prepare emergency medical supplies for transport to the surface. Make sure everything is ready for rapid deployment. Each person she contacted was someone she had worked with for years. They were skilled, trustworthy, and smart. More importantly, they were people who had lost friends in previous battles. They would want to help if they understood what was really happening. Sarah also sent a second message to her brother Marcus on the planet below. This one was disguised as a routine supply report. Marcus, the geological survey has been updated. The red iron oxide deposits in your area are more extensive than first thought. However, we have identified a new mining site in Sector 23 that shows promising mineral content. The local miners suggest that a coordinated approach would be most effective. They recommend using standard mining frequency, 847.2 for coordination between teams. Frequency 847.2 was an old emergency frequency that human miners had used before the Zephyrians found Earth. Marcus would remember it from their childhood when their father had used it to coordinate mining operations. By the end of the second day, Sarah had contacted 43 humans across the fleet. Not all of them would understand what she was really asking. Some might be too scared to help. But she hoped that enough would participate to make her plan work. The plan was simple in concept, but complicated to execute. During the battle, human, technical specialists would create system failures across the Zephyrian fleet. The failures would look like accidents or equipment stress, but they would happen at exactly the right times to disrupt the Zephyrian battle plan. Meanwhile, Sarah would use the mining frequency to coordinate with the human battalions on the planet. Instead of walking into the trap the Zephyrians had set, the humans would spring a trap of their own. Sarah looked at the timer on her computer. The operation would begin in 18 hours. She had done everything she could to prepare. Now she had to wait and see if barbarians could outsmart an advanced alien civilization. She thought about her parents and how proud they would have been to see their children working together to save human lives. She thought about all the humans who had died in previous battles, believing they were dying for a good cause. Tomorrow, she would find out if humans really were just barbarians, or if they were something much more dangerous than their alien masters had ever imagined. The morning of the operation, Sarah woke up early and went to the command center. She sat at her usual station and tried to look normal, but her heart was beating fast. In a few hours, she would know if her plan would work or if she had just made everything worse. Admiral Keth Tar, the Zephyrian commander of the fleet, was already in the command center. He was a tall, thin alien with blue skin and large black eyes. Like all Zephyrians, he thought humans were useful, but stupid. Sarah had heard him call humans clever beasts many times. Commander Chen, Admiral Keth Tar said in his cold voice, "Are the human battalions ready for their glorious mission?" Sarah nodded. "Yes, Admiral. All units report ready for combat operations." "Excellent," the Admiral said. "Today we will show the hegemony the power of Zephyrian strategy. The humans will attack with their usual barbaric fury, and while the enemy wastes their strength fighting barbarians, our real forces will strike the killing blow." Sarah kept her face calm, but inside she felt angry. The Admiral was talking about her brother and 15,000 other humans like they were animals being sent to slaughter. "Admiral," Sarah said carefully, "should I maintain communication with the ground forces during the battle?" "Of course," Admiral Keth Tar replied. "We need to know when the barbarians have done enough damage to justify our intervention. Monitor their progress, but do not interfere with their natural fighting instincts. Humans fight best when they are angry and confused." Sarah nodded again. The Admiral had no idea that she planned to do much more than just monitor the battle. As the morning went on, more Zephyrian officers arrived in the command center. They talked excitedly about the easy victory they expected to win. None of them paid attention to the human technicians who were working at stations around the room. At exactly 10 o'clock, the first part of Sarah's plan began. Tom Rodriguez, the human engineer on the Stellar Wind, reported a power fluctuation in the ship's main weapon systems. "Admiral," Tom said over the communication system, "we are experiencing some unusual power readings. The weapons should still function normally, but we might see reduced efficiency." Admiral Keth Tar looked annoyed. "Can you fix it quickly?" "I am working on it, sir," Tom replied. "It might be related to the stress of preparing for a large operation. These systems work very hard when we are getting ready for battle." The Admiral waved his hand dismissively. "Do your best, Barbarian. We can manage with slightly reduced power if necessary." 15 minutes later, Lisa Park reported communication interference on the Night Hunter. "Admiral, we are getting some background static on our main communication channels. I can filter most of it out, but coordination between ships might be slightly more difficult than usual." "Fix it," the Admiral ordered. "Yes, sir. I believe it is caused by electromagnetic interference from the planet below. It should clear up once we move to different positions." More problems started happening across the fleet. Mike Chen reported that some ammunition had been damaged during transport and needed to be replaced. Amy Foster said the targeting sensors were showing minor calibration errors. Carlos Vega discovered that several ships needed emergency maintenance on critical systems. Each problem was small and seemed normal. Military equipment often had problems during big operations. But together, all these small problems meant that the Zephyrian fleet was not working perfectly. Admiral Keth Tar was getting frustrated, but he was not suspicious. He thought the problems were normal equipment failures caused by barbarian incompetence. At 11:30, the human battalions on the planet reported that they were ready to begin their attack. Sarah opened a communication channel to her brother. Battalion 15, this is Command. Are you ready for Operation Sandstorm? Marcus's voice came through the speaker. Command, Battalion 15 is ready. All units are in position. Sarah took a deep breath. Now came the most dangerous part of her plan. She had to warn Marcus without letting the Zephyrians know she was doing it. Battalion 15, be advised that geological surveys indicate unstable ground conditions in your primary target area. Recommend extreme caution when approaching sectors 7, 12, and 15. There was a pause. Then Marcus replied, Command, understood. We will proceed with caution and adapt our approach as needed. Sarah felt relief. Marcus had understood her warning. Admiral Keth Tar was listening to the conversation. What is this about geological surveys? He asked Sarah. Standard safety protocol. Admiral, Sarah replied. The planet has unusual mineral formations that can affect combat operations. I want to make sure our forces are aware of potential hazards. The Admiral nodded. He was not interested in technical details that he thought were beneath his attention. Noon, the battle began. The human battalions started their attack on the main hegemony base just as the Zephyrian plan required. But thanks to Sarah's warning, they did not attack in the way the Zephyrians expected. Instead of charging directly at the enemy positions, Marcus and the other battalion commanders used careful tactics. They approached from unexpected directions and used the planet's terrain to protect their soldiers. They moved slowly and carefully, like hunters stalking dangerous prey. The hegemony forces had been expecting a wild barbarian charge. They had positioned their weapons and soldiers to stop that kind of attack. When the humans attacked differently, the hegemony was confused and could not respond effectively. Meanwhile, Sarah's network of human technicians continued to create problems for the Zephyrian fleet. At exactly 12:30, when the Zephyrians were supposed to begin their attack on the hegemony supply depot, multiple system failures happened at once. The Stellar Wind lost power to its main engines. The Night Hunter's communication system crashed completely. The Iron Fist's navigation sensors stopped working. 3 other ships reported critical malfunctions that required immediate attention. Admiral Keth Tar stared at his command displays in disbelief. What is happening? He demanded. How can so many systems fail at once? Sir, David Kim replied from his computer station. It appears that the stress of combat operations has caused a cascade failure. When one system failed, it put extra load on other systems, causing them to fail as well. Can you fix it? The Admiral asked. We are trying, sir, but it will take time. The good news is that most systems should come back online within a few hours. But a few hours was too long. The Zephyrian attack on the supply depot had to happen now, while the hegemony was distracted by the human assault. If they waited, the opportunity would be lost. Admiral Keth Tar turned to look at the displays showing the battle on the planet. The human battalions were fighting well, but they were not dying fast enough. The hegemony was not using all their weapons and soldiers to fight them. Some enemy forces were still guarding the supply depot. This is unacceptable, the Admiral said. Order the humans to attack more aggressively. They must draw more enemy forces away from the supply depot. Sarah pretended to send new orders to the human battalions, but instead, she used the old mining frequency to send a different message. All mining teams, this is survey control. Recommend shifting operations to Sector 23. Mineral concentrations there are higher than expected. Use standard extraction techniques for maximum efficiency. Marcus understood immediately. Sector 23 was where the hegemony supply depot was located. Sarah was telling him to attack the supply depot directly. On the planet below, Marcus gathered the other battalion commanders and explained what he thought Sarah was really telling them. Instead of dying in a hopeless attack on the main base, they could capture something valuable and important. The human battalions changed their attack completely. They stopped fighting the main hegemony base and moved toward the supply depot. The hegemony forces were so surprised by this change that they could not react quickly enough to stop it. Within 2 hours, the humans had captured the supply depot and all the valuable equipment and information inside it. They had also captured several high-ranking hegemony officers who had been hiding there. Admiral Keth Tar watched the battle reports with amazement. The barbarian humans had somehow won a great victory without any help from the Zephyrian fleet. They had captured more valuable intelligence and equipment than the Zephyrians had hoped to get from their own planned attack. Incredible, the admiral said. The humans have exceeded all expectations. Their barbaric tactics have somehow succeeded where our careful planning might have failed. Sarah smiled to herself. The admiral thought the humans had won through luck and barbaric fury. He had no idea that they had won through careful planning and coordination. But Sarah's real plan was just beginning. She had saved her brother and proven that humans could be smart and sneaky. Now she had to decide what to do with that knowledge. After the successful battle, Sarah felt proud but also worried. She had saved her brother and the other humans, but she had also discovered something terrible. The Zephyrians had been betraying and killing humans for years. The battle she had just helped win was only one small victory in a much larger war. Over the next few weeks, Sarah quietly investigated more Zephyrian files. What she found made her sick with anger and fear. The betrayals were happening everywhere, on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. The Zephyrians had a secret plan called Project Clean Slate. The goal was to use humans as soldiers until they were no longer needed, then eliminate them completely. Some human colonies had already been lost to enemy action after serving their purpose. The Zephyrians had destroyed entire worlds full of human families and children. Sarah realized that saving her brother's battalion was not enough. If she did nothing more, humans across the galaxy would continue to die. But what could she do? She was just one person on one ship in a huge fleet. The answer came to her slowly over many days of thinking and planning. The battle had shown her that humans throughout the fleet could work together secretly. They could coordinate their actions without the Zephyrians knowing. More importantly, humans held important positions throughout the Empire. They were engineers, technicians, medical officers, and communication specialists. The Zephyrians trusted them with critical jobs because they thought humans were too stupid to be dangerous. Sarah began reaching out to humans on other ships and other worlds. She used the same careful methods she had used before the battle, hiding her real messages inside normal work communications. She started with the people who had helped her during the battle. Tom Rodriguez, Lisa Park, Mike Chen, David Kim, and the others had proven they could be trusted and they could follow complex plans. To each of them, she sent a message that looked like a routine personnel evaluation. Please provide a detailed report on human staff performance in your department. I am particularly interested in individuals who show exceptional skill, loyalty, and discretion. The replies she received were coded lists of humans who might be willing to join a larger resistance movement. Within a month, Sarah had contact, information for over 200 humans scattered across the Zephyrian fleet and military. But Sarah wanted more than just people in the fleet. She needed to reach humans on the colonies and industrial worlds. She needed a network that covered the entire galaxy. The breakthrough came when David Kim discovered something interesting in the Zephyrian computer systems. The aliens used a communication network that connected every world in their empire. They thought the network was secure because only Zephyrians had access to it, but humans who worked as technicians and maintenance workers could access parts of the network for their jobs. David showed Sarah how to use maintenance protocols to send messages through the network. The messages would look like routine technical reports, but they would actually be communications between human resistance cells. Sarah, David said quietly as they worked late one night, I have been thinking about what we are doing. If the Zephyrians discover this, they will kill us all. Sarah nodded. I know. But if we do nothing, they will kill us anyway. At least this way we have a chance to fight back. David was quiet for a moment. Then he said, My sister lives on Colony 12. I received a message last week saying that her settlement was attacked by pirates, but now I wonder if it was really pirates. Sarah put her hand on David's shoulder. We are going to find out what really happened to her, and if the Zephyrians are responsible, we are going to make them pay. Over the next 3 months, Sarah built a network of human resistance cells across 50 star systems. Each cell was small and independent. Most members did not know about the other cells, which made the network harder for the Zephyrians to discover and destroy. The cells gathered information about Zephyrian military plans, industrial operations, and colonial administration. They also prepared for coordinated action when the time came to strike back. Sarah learned that the Zephyrians were planning something called Final Solution for the human problem. In 6 months, they would begin systematically eliminating human colonies that were no longer useful. Billions of people would die. She also learned that humans were not the only species the Zephyrians oppressed. There were dozens of other alien races that served the Empire as slaves, soldiers, or workers. Many of them hated their Zephyrian masters as much as humans did. Sarah realized that a successful rebellion would need more than just humans. It would need all the oppressed species working together. Through her network, she made contact with representatives of other alien races. There were the Karani, who were brilliant engineers but treated as expendable workers. There were the Vorth, who were fierce warriors but forced to fight in suicide missions. There were the Malari, who were natural scientists but used only as medical test subjects. Each species had skills that could help a rebellion succeed. More importantly, each species had reasons to hate the Zephyrian Empire. Sarah began planning something that had never been attempted before, a coordinated uprising involving multiple species across the entire galaxy. The plan would be incredibly complex and dangerous. If it failed, the consequences would be terrible for everyone involved. But Sarah had learned something important during the battle to save her brother. The Zephyrians' greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. They believed they were superior to everyone else. They thought other species were too stupid, too primitive, or too weak to threaten them. This arrogance made them careless. They did not guard their secrets carefully because they did not think anyone else could understand or use those secrets. They did not watch their slaves closely because they did not believe slaves could organize effective resistance. Sarah's plan would use this arrogance against them. The rebellion would succeed not through superior firepower, but through superior intelligence and coordination. The key was timing. The uprising had to happen everywhere at once before the Zephyrians could respond. It had to be coordinated across hundreds of worlds and thousands of ships. Most importantly, it had to happen before the Zephyrians began their final solution against the human colonies. Sarah set the date for the uprising, the Festival of Dominion, the most important holiday in the Zephyrian calendar. On that day, Zephyrian leaders from across the galaxy would gather on the capital world for a great celebration of their empire. Military commanders would be attending ceremonies instead of watching their fleets. Colonial governors would be making speeches instead of monitoring their worlds. It would be the perfect time for the oppressed peoples of the galaxy to remind their masters that dominion was not the same as ownership. Sarah sent a coded message to every resistance cell in her network. The harvest season approaches. All farming teams should prepare for simultaneous planting operations. Use traditional methods and local coordination. The crop yield will determine our future prosperity. The message looked like routine agricultural planning, but every human, Karani, Vorth, and Malari who received it understood the real meaning. In 3 months, the barbarians would show the galaxy what they had learned from their masters. Sarah looked out the window of her quarters at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, her brother was training new recruits and preparing for battles he thought were glorious. Somewhere else, human families were living peacefully, not knowing that their alien protectors planned to murder them, but scattered throughout the galaxy, in engine rooms and communication centers, in medical bays and supply depots. The oppressed peoples of the Empire were getting ready to fight back. The Zephyrians had made one critical error in their calculations. They had assumed that barbarians would always be barbarians. They had never considered that barbarians might learn to be something else entirely. The Festival of Dominion was the most important day in the Zephyrian Empire. For 1,000 years, the aliens had used this day to celebrate their conquest of the galaxy and their rule over hundreds of species. Sarah stood in the command center of the flagship, watching Admiral Kethtar prepare for the grand ceremony. The admiral was wearing his finest uniform, decorated with medals representing his victories over inferior species. He was excited because today, he would be honored for his recent success using human forces against the hegemony. Commander Chen, the Admiral said, make sure all human personnel understand the significance of today. They should feel honored to serve the Empire on this glorious day. Yes, Admiral, Sarah replied. I will make sure they understand. What the Admiral did not know was that Sarah and her network had spent months planning for this exact moment. Across the galaxy, thousands of humans and other oppressed aliens were ready to act. They had weapons, plans, and most importantly, they had coordination. The rebellion would begin at exactly noon, Zephyrian Standard Time. That was when the main ceremony would start on the capital world, and when Zephyrian leaders would be most distracted by their celebrations. Sarah looked at her watch. It was 11:45. In 15 minutes, everything would change. At 11:50, Sarah received a message that looked like a routine supply report. All farming equipment is in position. Weather conditions are perfect for planting. Beginning operations in 10 minutes. The message came from David Kim, who was now coordinating the rebellion from a secret location in the asteroid belt. Every human in the Resistance network would receive the same message. In 10 minutes, they would all act at the same time. At 11:55, Sarah sent her own message to every human on the ship. Attention all personnel. Please report to emergency stations for routine safety drill. This is not an actual emergency. The Zephyrian officers ignored the message. They were used to humans doing boring safety procedures that did not concern them. But every human on the ship understood that this was the signal they had been waiting for. At exactly noon, the rebellion began. On the capital world, human servants activated hidden explosives in the government buildings. Karani engineers shut down power grids across major cities. Vorth soldiers turned their weapons on their Zephyrian commanders. Milari scientists released toxins that made Zephyrian leaders sick, but did not harm other species. On military worlds, human technicians sabotaged weapon factories and ship construction facilities. They had spent months learning exactly how to break the most important machines in ways that would take weeks or months to repair. On colony worlds, human settlers seized control of communication centers and government offices. They broadcast messages to other colonies, telling them that the rebellion had begun and how to join it. On ships throughout the fleet, human crew members took control of critical systems. They locked Zephyrian officers out of computer networks, disabled weapons systems, and seized control of navigation and communication equipment. But the most important part of the rebellion happened in space itself. For months, human engineers had been secretly building new ships and weapons in hidden asteroid bases. They had stolen technology from their Zephyrian masters and improved it using human creativity and determination. When the rebellion began, these secret fleets appeared throughout the galaxy. They attacked Zephyrian military bases, rescued human colonies that were about to be destroyed, and captured important strategic locations. On Sarah's ship, the rebellion went exactly as planned. Human crew members quickly took control of the engine room, communication center, and weapon systems. The Zephyrian officers found themselves trapped in the command center with no way to contact other ships or fight back. Admiral Kethtar stared at Sarah in shock and rage. "What is the meaning of this treachery?" he demanded. "It is not treachery, Admiral," Sarah replied calmly. "It is justice. We know about Project Clean Slate. We know about the final solution. We know that you have been murdering human colonies for years." The Admiral's blue skin turned pale. "How could you possibly know about those classified operations?" Sarah smiled. "You taught us your language, your technology, and your military tactics. You put us in positions where we could see and hear everything you did. You never worried that we might be smart enough to understand what we learned." "Impossible," the Admiral said. "Humans are barbarians. You are too primitive to organize something like this." "You are right, Admiral. We are barbarians, but we are barbarians who learned from the best teachers in the galaxy. You showed us how to be ruthless, how to use deception, and how to sacrifice others for victory. The only difference is that we are better students than you expected." Through the communication system, Sarah could hear reports from across the galaxy. The rebellion was succeeding beyond her wildest dreams. Hundreds of worlds had been liberated, thousands of ships had been captured. Millions of oppressed people were free for the first time in generations. But the most satisfying news came from her brother Marcus, who was leading the liberation of the human colony worlds. Sarah, Marcus's voice came through the speaker. Colony 7 is secure. The Zephyrian governor surrendered without a fight. We found documents that prove they were planning to poison our water supply next month. Excellent work, Marcus, Sarah replied. How are the other colonies? All 17 human colonies are now under human control. We also freed 6 Karani worlds and 3 Vorth settlements. The aliens there want to join our alliance. Sarah felt tears of joy running down her face. For the first time since she had discovered the Zephyrian betrayal, she believed that humans might actually survive and be free. Admiral Kethtar was listening to these reports with growing horror. This cannot be happening, he said. The Empire is too strong, you cannot possibly defeat us. We are not trying to defeat you, Admiral, Sarah said. We are trying to replace you. For 1,000 years your people have ruled the galaxy through fear and oppression. You have told everyone that you were superior and that other species were inferior. But today we prove that intelligence and determination are more important than technology and arrogance. Sarah turned to address all the Zephyrian officers in the command center. You have a choice, she said. You can accept that your empire is finished and work with us to build something better. Or you can fight us and discover that barbarians can be very creative when it comes to warfare. Most of the Zephyrian officers chose to surrender. They were soldiers and administrators, not fanatics. When they saw that their empire was collapsing and that further resistance was hopeless, they agreed to negotiate. But some Zephyrian fleets tried to fight back. They discovered that the primitive humans had spent months studying Zephyrian military tactics and developing countermeasures. The human ships were smaller and less powerful than Zephyrian vessels, but they were faster, more maneuverable, and operated by crews who fought with intelligence and coordination instead of arrogance and tradition. Within a week, the Zephyrian Empire had collapsed completely. Some Zephyrian worlds surrendered peacefully and asked to join the new alliance of free species. Others tried to maintain independence but found themselves isolated and unable to function without the slave labor they had depended on for centuries. Sarah found herself elected as one of the leaders of the new Galactic Federation. It was a temporary position until proper democratic elections could be organized. But she took the responsibility seriously. Her first official act was to establish the Barbarian Memorial, a monument to all the humans and other species who had died fighting for Zephyrian masters who considered them expendable. The memorial was built on the former Zephyrian capital world, in the exact location where the Festival of Dominion ceremonies had been held. The inscription on the memorial read, "They called us barbarians. They were right. We simply redefined what barbarism could accomplish." Sarah often visited the memorial with her brother Marcus, who had become the commander of the Federation Defense Force. They would stand together in silence, remembering their parents and all the other people who had died before they could see freedom. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Marcus asked one day. Sarah looked at the busy spaceport nearby, where ships from dozens of different species were arriving and departing in peace. Human families were reuniting with relatives they had thought were dead. Karani engineers were teaching their advanced technology to anyone who wanted to learn. Vorth warriors were serving as peacekeepers instead of cannon fodder. Milari scientists were using their knowledge to heal instead of harm. "Yes," Sarah said. "We did exactly what barbarians should do. We learned from our enemies, and then we became better than them." The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Intelligence and determination could triumph over technology and tradition. Cooperation could defeat oppression. And sometimes, the people others called barbarians were actually the most civilized of all.